Setting up our page before we print. Working with the budget file, I'm going to set up our page before we print through the Page Layout tab on our ribbon and work with commands in the Page Setup group. You can see how it offers up margins all the way to print titles as commands. If you'd rather work with the Page Setup dialog box, focus in on this bottom right-hand portion of this grouping, and when you hover over this arrow, you'll note that it says Show Page tab of the Page Setup dialog box. In other words, when you click on here, it takes us to that tab in the Page Setup dialog box. We can work with either the ribbon or the Page Setup dialog box to set up our page before we print. I'm going to take advantage of working with the ribbon right now, and if I need to, I'll go to this Page Setup dialog box later. So I'm going to cancel. The orientation for the Sparkle Cleaning Limited has been set up as portrait. I'm going to choose landscape. And as soon as I choose landscape, you'll see something was adjusted, and now I've got this edge here indicating between columns L and M that this, all the way up to including column L, is going to be my page 1, and on the other side is going to be my page 2. But when we go to print preview, we can see it more when in view here when we're in print preview. So I've got my page 1 all the way to November, which was my L column, and then when I go to the next page, it's going to show me the rest of my information. Back at the Page Layout tab on the ribbon, let's focus in on the orientation command yet again, and when we click on Portrait, this time it's going to show us that the edge is going to be at column I. I'm going to make it so it's landscape so we can see as much content as possible on that first page. Suppose we want to repeat headings so that we can see them when we're on page 1 as well as page 2. When we get into print titles, you'll see that we're in the Page Setup dialog box on the Sheet tab. Print titles offers up rows to repeat at top, columns to repeat at left. Let's click on rows to repeat at top here to start off with. And then when I click on row 3, you can see how it has as an absolute value, row 3 is going to be repeated at the top. So when I'm on a new page, it's going to repeat that row for me. Columns to repeat, column A. It's actually going to land up selecting this entire area all the way up to the end of the merge. How can I fix this so I only get one column? Well, I'm positioned exactly where I want my cursor to be, and so when I hit backspace and type in an A, it's going to be only one column, column A, that's repeated at the top, or pardon me, at the left of my spreadsheet for every page. When I click OK and I go to print preview and go to the next page, you can see how my column A is anchored, and I've got my December showing now because that's my row 3, starting in my row 3. Have you noticed that when we're in print preview, it actually takes us to the File tab and the print area? So if I'm at Page Layout and I don't want to choose print preview from here, I could simply go to the File tab, choose Print, and on the right hand portion you'll see that this is the print preview. Let's return back to Page Layout yet again. Suppose there's a portion of your spreadsheet you want to print. You want to print just a select area. So what you need to do is first highlight the data that you want to print, and then you'll choose Print Area. So let's select columns A through to G, because this is going to be our first half of the year. And when I choose Print Area, Set Print Area, you can see how there's a boundary here now. When I go to Print Preview, here I'm going to have to hit Show Print Preview, and now you can see how these columns are going to be printed. I know Sparkle Cleaning, part of it is only going to be viewed, but that's something for you to keep in mind when you're going to want to print a portion of your spreadsheet. But may I remind you that we selected the entire columns A all the way up to where June is, Let's fix this so that we don't have this Sparkle Cleaning Limited with only a part of it showing. We go back to page layout, let's go to print area and clear print area. Now let's select only truly what we want to print. So we'll go down to here, all the way down to our last cell, and when we do print area, set print area, now go to print preview. You'll see how it comes up with this print area here. Let's return back to the File tab, Print, and focus in on the print options here in this left-hand portion of the screen. How many copies do you want to print? What printer do you want to choose? And how many pages do you want to print? So if you only want one page, you click in here in this text box, type in a 1, and then type in another 1 in the next text box. And so on. We've got our landscape orientation, but if you want portrait instead, we've got it here. Letter, what type of paper size do you want besides letter? You'll need to fiddle with this a little bit so that you can see whatever you're selecting here is going to affect your print preview. If you want to return back to page setup, you don't have to go back to the page layout tab to do so. You can click on page setup right here so that you've got your dialog box ready for you to enter some information or select some other choices. However, there's some limits to this dialog box when you're in print preview. Watch what happens when I go to the sheet tab. Do you see how I cannot get into the print titles area or even the print area? It's because I'm in print preview right now, and really truly it's the print preview and print area. So how can I adjust this? Well, I need to cancel, go back to page layout, and then hit my page setup dialog box and launch it here. And then when I go to the sheet tab, I can manipulate any one of these choices here now. I'm going to fix it so that we're going to default and print everything. So when we have no print area, it means it's going to land up printing everything. When I follow through with OK, it's going to make it so that it saves my changes. But why don't we go to print preview from here, and you can see how it takes me to my print preview. I can work further with adjusting, though, the scaling. You know how we only have just a few columns on the next page? Why don't we try to make it so that all the content is on one page? So the last choice here, called no scaling, is something I want us to view. Fit sheet on one page. Let's see what happens when we try to fit all the information on one page. Well, it seems to be rather tiny, and don't forget this is print preview. But the thing is, you might want to adjust it so that you've got less margin space on the right side. We're going to go to custom margins here to adjust the margins. I'm going to click on custom, back to the page setup dialog box, margins tab this time. We're going to trim down our right margin and our left so that when we click OK, our scaling will make it larger view so we can see the information better. You're going to need to fiddle around with this a little bit. Sometimes the only way you truly can see what that data is going to look like is when you print out one copy of that file. I'm going to show you one more thing. When it comes to viewing grid lines or even printing them, or the opposite, you don't want to see grid lines at all. Back at the Page Layout tab, you'll see the Sheet Options group. Grid lines to view is checked off, and grid lines for headings for viewing is checked off as well. So you can see the grid lines in view here. If I turn off the grid lines for viewing, you see that the screen has been cleaned up somewhat. No more grid lines, and now you can actually view the borders without all of this extra noise on the screen. When I choose to print grid lines, what happens when I go to print preview? You could see the grid lines here in my print area, in my print preview. Back to the Page Layout tab, I'm probably going to work with the defaults. Get rid of print grid lines and turn on for viewing so that I can see exactly the boundaries between one cell and another for viewing, but not for printing.